Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Alexis Garcia, and I'm one of the project managers assisting with this project. We'll be getting started with this project here with a presentation here in a couple of minutes, so just sit tight and let us know if you have any questions. Throughout the presentation, there is a Q&A feature on your window that you can submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will answer those at the end. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes for people to join and get started here at 6. And while we're waiting, we do have some interactive questions for you all. And so if you want to join us to participate in the Mentimeter, I invite you all to use your web browser or your phone to scan the QR code or log on to menti.com using this code. And so throughout the presentation, we'll have interactive questions that we'll want you all to participate in. And when you get there, you should see your first question for what are some things that you consider uniquely Oak Ridge? So you can feel free to start thinking about what makes Oak Ridge special, what makes it unique, and entering responses to this question. Once again, that's going to menti.com and using the code 85040561. I see quite a few of us in the room. Kind of excited to see the community coming together for this virtual presentation. It's one of our first presentations to the community, so we'll get started here in just a minute or so. I see quite a few people jumping in, and so I think we should be good to get started here. I will go back to my previous slide. So we are just at 6 p.m. I see just over 40 people in the room, so this is a good turnout for our presentation here this evening. My name is Alexis Garcia, and I'm one of the project managers assisting on this comprehensive plan update for the city of Oak Ridge. I am very excited to have all of you joining us this evening for this first presentation about the comprehensive plan, what we're doing, why it's important, and how you can be involved. And so just a couple of housekeeping items. Since it is a virtual meeting, all of your cameras and microphones are off. You can use the Q&A feature on the Teams to ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll be monitoring those, and we'll have time at the very end of the presentation to respond to those questions. And then a recording of the presentation will be available following the meeting, and if you registered, it should come straight to your email right after the presentation. You can find a copy of the recording and a summary of the responses on the project website. And then once again, if you just joined us, we are having interactive questions throughout the presentation. So you can always join our Mentimeter questions by going to menti.com or using this QR code on your phone. So let's take a look. I see a couple of responses coming in. So let's take a look and see what we've heard. So the question we asked are, what are some of those things that you consider uniquely Oak Ridge? See things like the river and the labs. Excellent. The natural resources for sure. When we were touring the city, it was absolutely beautiful with the natural landscape. All right, not enough outreach to visitors. Okay. The history for sure. The Manhattan Project, of course, no one else can say that about their history. The greenways and green spaces, rowing, of course. The origin, the great school system. The arts and culture for sure. The diversity of the citizens. All right. These are some great responses. So thank you all for participating. We're glad to have you. And so from here, I want to start with a brief video from our mayor giving a welcome about why we're here and how important this is. So let me get this set up for you all. Oh, one moment. Getting this switched over.
Good evening, Oak Ridgers. Thanks for your involvement and for caring about the future of our city. It's important that you
All right, let me
express your opinions. And this is just the first of many citywide opportunities to do that in the comprehensive planning process. City Council will use this plan to make decisions on important projects to keep great things happening at Oak Ridge every day. Thanks for being involved.
Thank you, Mayor, for your support. State law requires that the Planning Commission adopt a comprehensive plan, which is typically a 20-year vision for the future that we hope to build. I share the Mayor's appreciation for your involvement and look forward to creating a great plan for Oak Ridge 2045 together.
And from there, I'd like to turn it over to the Planning and Development Director, Wayne Blasius.
Welcome, everybody. First of all, thanks to Mayor Gooch and Chairperson Whitson for welcoming you, but also for being so committed to this project. I want to particularly thank all of the citizens that are on this call tonight. Look forward to seeing you throughout the process. It's incredibly important that we get extensive engagement and input throughout this planning process to have a great plan. It's clear from the last few years' development that growth is happening to Oak Ridge, in Oak Ridge. The question is, do we want to let it happen to us, or do we want to direct how it happens, in what ways and what places, and the kind of development that we imagine for our best future? That's what this process is about. Thank you for participating. Look forward to this presentation and your input tonight. With that, I'll turn it back over to Alexis and the team that is helping us on this project. I'll be here for questions that relate to the city if necessary, and as she said, there'll be Q&A as well as places to leave questions at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wayne. And so like Wayne said, it's not just myself and Wayne working on this project. It's quite a large team of both the city and the consultants to make this plan happen. So we're working closely with city staff in the planning development department, IT services, and public works. And one of the key elements of this is the Planning Commission. It is their role to administrate the comprehensive plan. And so we're working closely with them to help us guide and steer this project. Myself and the Friese & Nichols team will be leading this as the consultants on this project. Friese & Nichols is a multidisciplinary planning firm and will be assisted by Pillars Development for public engagement. And so you'll see many of these faces around town at different public engagement events as we're moving forward with the project. And so really what this is a comprehensive plan update. And so what is a comprehensive plan and why do we need it? So my next question for you all is, have you ever heard of a comprehensive plan before? Before today, have you been familiar with the comprehensive planning process? I know a lot of time, this is not something that's done every day. It's only done every so many years. And so this may be the first time you actually heard of comprehensive plan. Wow, okay, so many of you have heard of one before, been a part of a process similar to this. All right, so I don't need to be here. Everyone is perfectly knowledgeable about this project and we can just wipe the whole thing. All right. But it is something that not everyone has gone through. These are updated every 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years. And so it's not every day that maybe you're going through this process or have been actively involved in one. Okay, looks like a lot of responses here. All right. So going back to our presentation. So like I mentioned, what is a comprehensive plan? And many of you are intimately familiar, but this is really representing the long-term vision for the future. This is something that city leadership is going to use as a guiding policy for future decisions. It's a basis for subsequent ordinances like zoning regulations, and really is a tool for zoning decisions. This is something that is given authority through Tennessee state law. And so when you do have a comprehensive plan, it influences those zoning decisions moving forward. And so first I want to talk a little bit about Oak Ridge, its history, how it's growing and changing, and about what does it look like. And so what I want to hear from you all is, how long have you lived in Oak Ridge? Because as we're talking through, what are these changes? How has it changed since the 40s to today? Have you been here to see that change, seeing the growth in investment, the growth in population? Looks like, all right, a couple of long timers, all right. And so as we're talking about this, thinking about who lives here, how do we keep residents here? How do we get more people to live here? Right, quite a few, 20 plus, a couple people not in town, but very interested in the future of the community. All right, love that. All right, 1 to 5 years. So we have a mix of new residents and older residents. And so really that spectrum of how the city has grown over time. And as a reminder, if you've just joined us, you can join these interactive questions at menti.com and using the code at the top of the screen. So like I mentioned, a lot of you have been here and you have seen this growth over time. Oak Ridge really did peak in the 40s when it began with a population of 75,000, which is hard to imagine today. Over that middle section between the 50s, pretty much to today, it's kind of floated around a very stable, about 30,000 in population. And so really in the recent years, there's a potential for even 30, 40,000 in population over the next 20 to 30 years. And so this is really something that when the community started with a population of 75,000, where are we going from today and what does that potential change look like in the future? There are quite a few developments that many of you are probably very familiar with, many residential developments that are on the ground today, in development or soon to be developed. And so this is just representative of the growth and change with the addition of new residents, new people and population to the community. When we're talking about that regional relationship of Oak Ridge, we're talking about where is it and how is it nestled within the mountains, the location and proximity to Knoxville. We're split between 2 different counties, close proximity to Knoxville. And so having all of those amenities within this area, and it's very interesting that the population is very similar to Knoxville, and yet Knoxville has 6 times the population of Oak Ridge. So when you're thinking about that, what does Oak Ridge look like in the future? How does it compare and how can we continue to grow and change? When you're looking at the development activity, you can see over the last several years, there's been an increase in permit activity. And what this shows is the investment in the community, the growth and change and the additional investment just showing that there is new development coming and there's a level of investment and change. And so you can see a 79% change in those fees from 22 to 25. You can further see how this looks in the value of the construction that's being built and a significant change from 2017 and anticipating having almost $200 million in construction. And so this is a huge change and a huge investment in the community. And so as we're looking forward, we're thinking about this development is coming and how do we plan for it? The previous land use plan was done in 1988. And while I will admit I was not actually born at that time, this means that it's well overdue for an update. The plan, you can see on the screen that this is the plan scanned in, and it has only 5 different colors on it. We're showing mostly residential in the yellow. That's what you can see. Commercial areas are represented by the red areas. Office elements are in pink. More of the industrial is in the darker blue, and then the public land is shown in the light blue. Now, public land is a mixture of government facilities, state of Tennessee, city facilities, and DOE land. And what this means is, what you can also say is DOE land actually does take over half of the city. And so that's one of those considerations of what are the limitations for development? How has the city changed since 1988 to today? And what should the future land use plan look like? And so my next question for you all is, and then, so when we're looking at it today, so we've seen the previous land use plan. And so what we have on the screen here is the existing land use plan. This represents developments that are currently on the ground or how the land is currently used today. Similarly to the previous map, you can see the yellow areas for residential, red areas for commercial, blue areas for institutional or government properties. But on this map, most of your Department of Energy or reserved land is shown in a green color. And so this is a significant portion of the city, and this represents kind of one of those limitations for growth, limitations for development, and how can we plan for the areas that we do have. Another consideration is the history that this community has that was mentioned when we were looking at what makes Oak Ridge unique, is the legacy housing, and how do we preserve that housing while accounting for future development needs. And then also, as mentioned before, with new residential developments coming in, with new opportunities coming in, these new economic development announcements about the new Orano facility, potentials for downtown development and those new residential, how do we account for these new residents who live, shop, and play? So we've talked a little bit about the history of Oak Ridge, how the change over time, what a comprehensive plan is. In 2019, the city did a blueprint visioning process. So my next question for you all is, how many of you participated in that 2019 blueprint process? There was quite a bit of public engagement that was involved in that. And so when we're looking at this project, what we'll be looking at is how do we build on the input that was already done in that time and really using it as a starting point. Okay, a lot of people did participate, some people did not. All right, so this might be the first you're hearing about this blueprint process, this visioning idea. It was done between 2017, it was completed in 2019, and there was quite a bit of public engagement involved. All right, so we'll jump over back to our other presentation. So the 20 blueprint provided guidance for the community in terms of visioning and future development. It was completed in 2019, and for this process, we're using it as a starting point. It was assessed by the Planning Commission that all the hard work that was done in 2019 is still valid today. And really what that clear message from that visioning process was grow Oak Ridge, meaning that there needs to be more of a strategic direction for how growth happens and be doing it in a smart and efficient way while it still broadens and deepens the tax base. This document included that vision of being uniquely Oak Ridge, similar to the question that we asked. What are those things that make us special, that in our path more sustainable and higher quality future? Some of the things that were mentioned earlier, the greenways, the people, the history, the community, those are the things that make it uniquely Oak Ridge. As I mentioned previously, the vision for that is grow Oak Ridge, really talking about that balance between smart growth and optimizing the existing infrastructure, making sure that it's strategic and sustainable growth. And so then the values for this plan provide further guidance for this plan, focusing on that science and technology heritage, that commitment to public education, and really capitalizing on those natural assets and how important they are to the community. In the document, you can see that there are 6 plan elements, and the document is organized in this way in order to provide guidance for city leadership for how to implement the strategies identified in the plan. So the 6 plan elements you can see here: economic vitality and sustainable growth, housing in healthy neighborhoods, recreation and natural assets, land use and infrastructure, which is similar to what we're focusing on with the land use plan, transportation, mobility, and livability. And so we're going to use a lot of the recommendations and a lot of the hard work that was done in the blueprint process to start this process and incorporate many of the recommendations to continue the hard work today. Like I mentioned, this is a comprehensive plan, and one of the main features of this is the land use map, and it's long overdue for an update. So we will be updating the future land use map. This document identifies how it provides guidance on how the community should grow by establishing where certain land uses should be developed within the city. The city planners use this, city leadership uses this document. And one of the key things to remember is that the future land use plan is not the same as the zoning map. A lot of times they do look extremely similar because they use similar color symbology. However, the comprehensive plan is the long range visioning, while the zoning map is more of a regulatory document. The comprehensive plan will influence the recommendations that are made for the zoning map. And so the other piece of this is we will be digging into 5 small area studies. So in addition to the future land use plan, we'll be also identifying 5 different areas within the city to give a little bit more detail, focus on the visioning, focusing on the outcomes, and providing more strategic direction for them. And you can see them listed here, looking at the Wilson Street corridor, South Illinois Avenue, commercial corridor, looking around the Grove Center area, Jackson Square area, and the Melton Lake waterfront. And so what you can expect is we'll be looking at these different areas and going into just a little bit more detail than previously. Within this document, it is a comprehensive plan, and so there's 3 different phases. Looking at the data gathering and visioning phase, this is where we're looking at the existing conditions, doing the baseline analysis and community snapshot, starting to do that visioning, identifying what the community's vision is for the future, and helping to create the recommendations for the next section, the analysis and recommendations phase. This is where we dig into the future land use elements, natural parks and assets, looking at those outdoor spaces and the green spaces and incorporating previous plans that are already in place. Looking at the transportation and infrastructure network, that means looking at roadways and how people connect both by vehicular, walking, and pedestrian. Housing and community vibrancy will be focusing more on the housing elements and how to encourage different types of housing throughout the city. Looking at economic vitality, and once again, those small 5 area studies. So you'll see the large level, the high level future land use plan for the full city, and then digging in a little bit more with those small area studies. And the last phase of this will be the implementation phase, and arguably the most important part of the project, focusing on how is this actually going to get done. We don't want a document that's just going to sit on the shelf. We want to see action and implementation. And so this is where we'll be looking at the action items and the actual strategies for implementing the recommendations of the plan. In terms of schedule, we kicked off this project in October of 2024, starting with the background analysis, doing site research, background analysis, looking at existing conditions. The next phase of this plan moves into the plan development. So that's where we are right now, looking at land use development, the natural assets, transportation, housing, and economic vitality. We'll continue this through the spring. And around April of 2025, we're looking at starting those small area studies and digging into what does the community want to see in these areas, what do those recommendations look like, and how do we move forward. And then the last phase will be kicking off in September to October, looking at that implementation plan, looking at what are those different pieces and how are we going to get this done, and aiming for adoption later this year, starting in about November, December of this year and into spring of next year. The one thing you'll also notice is that the public engagement is running all the way through the project. That's one of the key elements of this, is we don't want this to just be sitting on a shelf. We don't just want this to be consultant-driven plan, but truly a community-driven plan. And so that leads me to engagement. How can you all be involved? And so there are many different ways that you can be involved in this project. But one of the things that we have already is the online survey. So I wanted to see how many of you have already taken that Oak Ridge 25 online survey. Ooh, one, love that. I do know that we have more than 3 submissions, so I hope that there's way more people who have already taken it. All right, well, I see 12 people who are going to take the online survey this evening. All right, so quite a couple people have taken it. I would like for a couple more people to take it tonight. All right. So people have heard about it, but there's still more opportunities because, like I said, that public engagement is going to continue throughout the process. And so, like I mentioned, there's many different ways to be involved. This particular process, we're going to have your traditional public meetings, both virtual like tonight and in person, which we actually have an in-person meeting next week. Community events and pop-ups, going out to local restaurants and venues and just doing pop-ups and meeting people where they are. You got your traditional media, radio, newspaper, those kinds of things, social media. We do have a project website that I'll show you here in a moment, the online survey, and even community ambassadors. And so we're really taking all the different methods that we can to integrate into this process. I did mention the ambassadors. So the ambassadors are advocates for the plan. So beyond the Planning Commission, beyond city staff and myself, the ambassador's role is to be an advocate for this plan and really enhance that research out into the community. Going out into their local organizations, their local neighborhoods, and really advocating for how can those people who maybe aren't always involved in these types of processes, and making sure that there is diverse outreach and input involved in our community input. And so I hope that you see all of these smiling faces out and about around town when you're going out and hearing about the comprehensive plan. This is not our first meeting, so just to give you a little bit of a taste, we held stakeholder interviews back in November. We met with quite a few people in different organizations. Many of those people are at this meeting tonight. Presentations with various community groups, such as the Chamber, the Rotary Club, and many, many others, having presentations, just making sure that everyone knows that we're doing this comprehensive plan and that their input matters. The community ambassadors have been at many different events within their own neighborhoods, different holiday events, the Christmas parade for sure. And then we're getting input from the online survey, which was launched in December. And so hoping to get way more responses after this meeting tonight. And like I said, we did have community events. We went to Calamity Coffee. We had a pop-up at the Greens for trivia night. And so just different creative ways to hear from the community. I did mention that we do have an online project website. And so this is an interactive website with many different ways to get information and give your input. You can take the online survey, tell us your vision, and you can even sign up to receive updates. On here, you'll receive information about upcoming meetings and events, copies of documents and meeting summaries. So even after this meeting, you can go on there to find copies of drafts, previous meetings that we've had, and summaries of previous meetings to see what people are saying. And so if you go to oakridgetn.gov/comprehensive plan, you can learn more about the project and get access to our online project website. So today, we've heard quite a bit from the community. We've had 266 survey responses from the online survey and 843 touch points with the community from the different presentations that have been done, community conversations that we've had, comments, responses, and different things. So this is quite a bit of input that we've had to date. And like I said, this is going to continue throughout the process. Some of the things that we've heard to date is echoing the idea of wanting vibrant neighborhoods and commercial areas, wanting them to be safely connected, and the ability to really navigate the city different ways besides vehicular transportation, walking, biking, being able to get around without getting in a car. The desire to have that really distinct visual identity, something that makes it uniquely Oak Ridge, building on that rich history and culture and arts, and also including that the strong education system, the STEM, and the connection to nuclear energy, as well as being a diverse and inclusive community. And so these are just some of the concepts that we've been hearing and those ideas. When we're talking about how do we retain residents and how should we be growing, providing recreation for all ability. So you don't have to go to other areas in order to have those entertainment options, and ensuring that there's quality, affordable housing. That's one of the things that we've heard echoed throughout is the providing of affordable housing in different types. This might mean multifamily, this might mean single family, but just the fact that it's affordable for all, as well as having a connected downtown, a place where the community can come together and gather, a safe place for shopping, events, community events, Christmas festivals, those kinds of things. And that's something that we've heard pretty consistently through different conversations. In terms of wanting to see future improvements, we heard things like fixing roads and sidewalks, revitalizing a lot of the existing housing and addressing vacant properties, encouraging more development and retail opportunities, and really developing along the waterfront in the Jackson Square area. The idea of taking advantage of all these parks, trails, and natural assets that are currently in the community, and really establishing visual placemaking, but which kind of mimics back to that, creating that identity for the community. And so this is just a snapshot of some of the things that we've been hearing from the community so far, and we still invite even more input. And so we do, like I said, we have the online survey, further conversations, and all these things that we want to hear from you all. And speak of which, we want to hear from you. And so I got a couple more questions for you all on the Mentimeter, so get those fingers ready. So what are your top reasons for living in Oak Ridge? We do want this to be an interactive conversation, because I know I've talked a lot about the history of the community that changed the process for the comprehensive plan. But one of the things that we're thinking about is, why do people live here? Similar to what makes it unique, why do you live here, and how do we keep people here? Creating a place that is safe, welcoming, diverse, proximity to work makes a lot of sense. That's commonly the choice. The schools, I've heard outstanding things about the school system, so that also makes lots of sense. Being closer to family. These are all excellent reasons for living in Oak Ridge. And it's definitely something that, as you can see from what we heard, a lot of this is being echoed over and over. Close to Knoxville, but not Knoxville. That's definitely something that we heard, that a lot of people live in Knoxville and they're commuting over. So how do we keep people here? What makes Oak Ridge more special, that you maybe want to live here and be close to work, be close to family, take advantage of everything that makes this place special? The great arts community, for sure. The cost of living, all right. Convenience. Oh, that's a very good point about the convenience and access to different things. Okay. the small community feel. I can definitely understand that from my own conversations with community residents. We moved, okay, from Colorado, good school system. All right. It's interesting. Family, arts community, diverse population. Schools, community feel, semi-rural. Okay, I can definitely see that. And you have a voice, which is definitely echoed in what we're doing tonight. No, these are all excellent input. And as you can see, a lot of things that I've mentioned throughout the presentation, what we've heard from the community, what we've been seeing from the analysis by looking at the growth and change, convenience to school and facilities. All right. Now, these are all excellent reasons for this. So keeping that in mind, so these are the reasons for living in Oak Ridge. As we move on to the next question, think about if you could improve 3 things about Oak Ridge, what would you change? So we've already identified what makes it so special and what makes it a great place to live, but how can we improve? What would need to be changed? I know a couple of things that were mentioned were just simple infrastructure things, the roadways, the sidewalks, more restaurants. That is something that we heard in several of our conversations, more diversity in the restaurant options, so you don't have to go somewhere else for entertainment or eating options. Affordable homes, like I mentioned earlier, we heard across the board from various conversations and from the feedback that we received, affordable housing in different varieties, but really just the key that it's more affordable. Diverse restaurants, more things to do for the young people. That is also something that we heard. You can see that in providing more recreation opportunities for all ages, not just adults, but also the teens. Improving visuals, okay. Slow growth, there's nothing wrong with being a small town. Okay, that's definitely something to consider because we know the growth is coming, but maybe slow it down. How does that look? How does Oak Ridge look in the future? More things for young adults, not just fast food, a centralized hub or downtown. All right, that's definitely something that we heard, a centralized location that can be used for this kind of thing. More destinations in walking distance of West Oak Ridge. That makes a lot of sense with the development going on in that area. Investing in outdoor resources, that's a good one. Public transit. Take advantage of the rowing events. Yes, those events bring a lot of people to the community. And so taking advantage of those for tourism would definitely be something that we could do. Better restaurants, more local businesses, improved accessibility, more parks instead of concrete, all right? Having that balance between development and open space. Investing into the hospitals, internet options, open spaces for sure. More bikeable, conserve green spaces, bike access to the west. More bikeable, street and sidewalk maintenance. Performing arts centers, okay. Awareness of growth potential. Making our roads more beautiful, bike access. So I'm hearing a lot of echoes about the desire for biking, connectivity without being in a car, improvements of our roads and sidewalks. So once again, we're hearing the same key themes echoed, and so that means we're getting into more of a singular, unified, comprehensive vision. All right, looks like we got some good input here, so I'm going to move on to our next question. All right, and still with the opportunities for growth. So then I'm going to move to our last question, and what we're looking at is, so I've talked a lot about implementation, and I've talked a lot about the different elements of this plan. And so when you're thinking about a planning process similar to this one, we had the visioning process and we have this comprehensive plan. In one word, what would make this plan successful? How do you think we can improve upon implementation and make sure that we have a successful plan? Because as I mentioned, implementation is the most important piece. We can put all of that work into the plan, but that doesn't mean anything unless we actually build it. And so we're seeing things like unity, communication, participation, all right, commitment, funding. That is always important when it comes to implementation of a plan, or different milestones. That's something we'll definitely be looking at, is those short, long, and midterm milestones, so that you have those low-hanging fruits while you're waiting on those long-range opportunities. Forethought, leadership, city council support, buy-in. Community buy-in is definitely what we're looking for. To make this a truly community-driven plan, we need participation, just like tonight, to be able to say, hey, these recommendations were created with input from the community. And so it's not just my plan, it's not just planning commission or city council, but it is a community created plan, right? I see education, walkable, forethought, people-centered, money, almost always at the center of everything, bottom-up growth, okay? Trust, affordability for sure. Unity, follow through. These are all good endpoints that we can incorporate into the plan as we're thinking about the vision and what updates need to be made, when we're thinking about recommendations that are being made, and most importantly, the implementation plan. We want to keep all of this in mind as we're asking the community for input, when we're incorporating these recommendations, and making sure that we're hearing from everyone in the community and that it is a truly comprehensive plan. Right, I don't see any more responses coming in. So I thank you all for your time and participation. This concludes our interactive questions. However, if you want to be interactive with us, we do have our in-person meeting next week that I'll tell you a little bit about. But first, now I want to take a moment for any questions. I know a couple questions were submitted in the Q&A during the presentation. You still have time. If you had time to digest all of the information and would like to ask a question, you can submit those by typing them into the Q&A feature in Teams, and we will respond to those. So I will request, so Shibangi, do we have any questions that came in through the Q&A?
Yes. So we got one question in the Q&A, and it's about the small areas. So somebody asked, how were the small areas selected? These are located in Central and East, and a lot of things are happening out West.
Wayne, I think you can answer this one.
Absolutely. To that question, and it is a great one. There are things happening all over the community. We had a kind of a longer list, which we vetted with the Planning Commission, who is officially in charge of this process. And even though there were more places than we wanted to focus on than were possible, the Planning Commission ultimately selected these 5. But it's important to know that it doesn't mean that the rest of the community doesn't get included or planned. This is like the entire community is in this plan. These are just areas that get just a little extra attention or emphasis. Not, I guess, more detail and extra level of planning, but all areas are important.
All right, Shubi, what else do we have?
So we have a few more questions. So one of the questions is about community engagement, and it asks, will the results of the survey be shared?
Yes, we will be doing posting the results of the summary of the survey once they are compiled. I will note that we will be leaving the survey open throughout the process so we can ensure that we're getting a lot of engagement, but we will be posting a survey summary as online just to give that information, as well as that information will be included in the report document that is published.
The next question is about growth and development. So somebody asked, what lessons have you learned what lessons has the city learned from the past 15 years or so with regard to development, and what mistakes have been noted to avoid moving forward?
That's a very interesting question. Wayne, I might ask for a little more assistance on this one. So thinking about in the last 15 years, what lessons have been learned and what kind of mistakes have happened? I would say from our research, just looking at what are those opportunities for growth and having those conversations with the different entities. But Wayne, I wanted to give you a moment to kind of think about this one, but do you have any input?
Question was, what things have we learned that we want to try to take advantage of? Is that?
Yeah.
Boy, all sorts of things. One of the things we have learned that for many, many years we had no growth, as Alexis went over earlier with that population trend. And so working particularly hand in hand with the chamber, we did an analysis of what some of the reasons were that growth had not occurred. Part of it was, an important part of it was the lack of new and a variety of housing. So recently, as we've had more new subdivisions and residential developments open, plus the prospect of a downtown development with urban housing, it has helped to spur the growth that we've had. The other thing that we heard over and over again was the lack of things to do if you are a young person, kind of from 16 to 35 or 40. And so the plan, an important part of the plan is to figure the kinds of things that the community would like to have that we don't already. So to try to answer, I guess, figuring out the things that have held us back in the past and trying to address those in the plan.
The next question is about the branding and theme of the plan. So somebody asked, why was Grow Oak Ridge selected as the main theme? That does not seem to represent the vision we worked on.
May just jump in and you can add more, Alexis, if you've seen information, but Planning Commission conducted the blueprint process starting in about 2017. And through that process, although there were many, many different ideas, different viewpoints, the things that Alexis reviewed as kind of a summary of the blueprint were the things that bubbled to the top that people said most. And although there is great different viewpoints, the things that Alexis reviewed as kind of a summary of the blueprint were the things that bubbled to the top that people said most. And although there is great appreciation for the small town character that we have, there's also a need to grow, particularly in terms of our ability to take care of our infrastructure. We have an 80-year-old infrastructure that was all built at once and wearing out at once. And we haven't had increases in our tax base to allow that. Nobody wants to pay higher taxes. And so the way to avoid that is to have growth within our city, but to be, as the blueprint slide said, to do that in a thoughtful way, not just growth and sprawl everywhere, but high quality growth that also contributes to quality of life.
Okay, we have a land use question next. So somebody asked, could warehouse area Belgrade Road be enhanced to promote recreational use, retail opportunities, and support surrounding neighborhoods?
And I think the simple answer to that one is yes. That's definitely something that we actually talked about with our initial ideas of what are those opportunities for revitalization and better use of those areas, and especially capitalizing on recreational uses and the proximity to nearby recreation trails, water. And so definitely, yes, that's an idea that we can incorporate as we're moving forward and thinking about what the different land uses are, what the different recommendations are going to be for different areas. And so that's definitely a good idea that we'll take note of as we're moving forward.
And the next question is about public engagement. Do we know what young people want?
Actually, I'm going to hand this one over to Wayne, who's been leading our youth efforts to make sure that everyone's included in this plan.
The only thing I would say so far that we know is what I mentioned just a minute ago about things to do. Remember, during the blueprint process, we were having a meeting at the high school, and I was talking to some boys that were seniors, and I asked one of them what he was going to do next year, and he said, go to college. And I said, after you graduate, what would make you want to come back to Oak Ridge? And he looked at me like I was insane and said, something to do. So we hear that time and time again from both youth and young adults. So we're in the process of trying to gather information from young people. We're encouraging both youth and young adults to participate. One of our ambassadors is focused on young professionals in the community. We're trying to have events, as Alexis mentioned, out at places in the community to get input. And so we don't have all the answers yet. This process is in the fairly early stages of engagement. But the biggest thing I would say is I met last week with Youth Leadership Oak Ridge, and those kids mentioned over and over again about having more things to do instead of having to drive to Knoxville for stuff that's fun.
And I think this kind of answers the next question, which was about how are we including our high school students and millennials? It was kind of the next question. Also, I think, Wayne, you touched on this. What benchmarks will be used? Seems like we've done this process before. So how have previous planning processes worked?
Well, as Alexis mentioned, the last comprehensive plan was done in 1988, and they're typically 20-year plans. So any math whizzes out there will know that it's a little bit overdue. The blueprint plan that the Planning Commission had the foresight to begin in the late teens helped to give us a general direction. But the hope is now not only to update that, because that's over 5 years ago, but also to have specific ways we can implement that more than just laying out a vision, but a vision with steps to get there.
And additionally, for this process, we'll create our
Alexis, we can't hear you.
I can move on to the next question while she gets back. I also have a request in the Q&A section about repeating the questions. So I'm gonna try to repeat the questions now. Somebody said, not a new idea, but can we offer knowledge, guidance, and or financial assistance to new residents who seek to modernize or upgrade legacy properties? I'm going to repeat this one. Can we offer knowledge, guidance, and or financial assistance to new residents who seek to modernize or upgrade legacy properties?
While we're waiting for Alexis, I'll jump on that. I think this will sound like a little bit of a broken record, but I think the answer to many of these questions is absolutely. And that's the point of this planning process, for us to come together as a community and decide what our highest priorities are, because we can do anything we want, we just can't do everything. So having priorities and the highest, the most important objectives and projects the community agrees on is important, so that people like City Council and the City Manager can focus on those and try to get the highest priorities accomplished that citizens have wanted to see.
the next question is also about previous planning efforts. The city was originally designed as walkable with many neighborhood centers. Is there anything in those plans that the team can refer back to and use? I'm going to repeat this question. The city was originally designed as walkable with many neighborhood centers. Is there anything in those plans that the team can refer back to and use?
Again, the plan is just beginning to come together, but that's a great objective. There is an emphasis specifically in the small area plans on both Jackson Square and Grove Center. So trying to create nodes that have more activity near people's homes is a high priority from our standpoint. Question is, will that be the highest priority from, the citizens throughout this process?
And I think Wayne is completely correct on the city was originally built to be more walkable. And so we do want to take a lot of those principles into our new planning effort and incorporate them as much as possible.
The other thing that's different from the history of our city is that in those days, the federal government ran a bus system 24/7 that connected all of those cities, all of those nodes, those little community centers to the center of town and to the employment bases. So we had an asset then that we don't have now, which helped a lot in terms of that connectivity.
We have just a few more questions to go. There is a question about the comprehensive planning process. Will the comprehensive plan be a living document, updated as needed by growth in our community?
Yes. So the comprehensive plan is not intended to be a static document. It does provide guidance for future growth, but just like we're doing today, it should be updated as changes happen in the community, and there's triggers that will require looking at what the new conditions are in the community, the new demographics, the new trajectories, and making adjustments as necessary. Typically, you would do a full update to a comprehensive plan every 10 years, and it's recommended to do an update similar to this one this one's a little bit more of an overhaul, but we are building on the 2019 plan. So you would do a full overhaul every 10 years or so, and an update every 5 years is recommended, as well as looking at it kind of on an annual basis and just making sure that city staff and city leadership knows what's in the comprehensive plan, have we done this, what's next, and what do we still need to do to achieve the vision.
And if many people participate and there are ideas that come through in the plan very, very strongly, I know we have several elected officials on this call, but if there are ideas that have very, very broad support, when it comes to budget time each year for those citizens that participated in the plan to step forward and say, we all got together and agreed that these are high priority things. Please address those in this year's budget and next year's.
So I think we have time for one more question. If we did not get to your question, we will be compiling responses to all of these and providing a FAQ afterwards in order to have a written report of all of these. So if we did not get you to your question, we'll definitely circle back and provide a response online. So Shubi, do we have one more question?
Sure. So the last question is, are we identifying public facilities where cultural and educational events can be held with engagement resources?
As part of the document, we'll be looking at some of those elements in terms of cultural resources and community resources as those key places that people are going to want to go. So that will be something that we will be looking at, and potentially that could result in future recommendations as well. And so that's definitely something that will be incorporated into the plan. All right. Thank you for your questions. These were all excellent in-depth questions, and I did see one come through the chat that I'm actually going to address here in a moment. So I appreciate all of your time for being here. In terms of next steps, so we had our virtual meeting tonight, and so this is one of our first citywide touch points that we've had. We're going to continue doing baseline analysis, looking at those existing conditions and starting into our analysis of those different elements that I described previously. Oh, I apologize. I'm not sharing my screen. That's what happens when the internet takes me offline. Here we go. So in terms of next steps, we've got the baseline analysis. We're going to continue collecting feedback from the online survey and the public engagement, and we'll have a number of in-person and virtual meetings throughout this process. We do have an in-person community open house next Wednesday, February 26th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Oak Ridge High School. And so we invite all of you to join us there. Many of the team members will be there from Pillars. Myself and Danny Wilson will be there. And so we'll have interactive activities, different ways to get input, even in more in-depth questions than we asked tonight. Really getting those ideas for transportation, housing. There's even activities for the young ones to participate. And so we really encourage everyone to be there and be able to give us your input. We'll have a brief presentation to kind of orient you to the ideas, but we do encourage all of you to participate and to join us next week. So I want to give a moment for Wayne. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share before we close out the meeting?
I just really appreciate everybody's participation, and I hope you will tell others and bring them to the meeting next week. And to that point, we had some people complain about having meeting on Wednesday night or meetings on Wednesday nights. There are so many things going on in the community, it's kind of hard to find an open space, but it is intended that we will have future meetings on different nights. So these fell on Wednesdays because those were available open dates between other meetings like City Council or Planning Commission or other boards, etc. But we will make a point of doing other meetings on other nights of the week because we know everybody has set things that they do on certain nights and just unavailable.
All right. And with that, we thank you again for participating. Please join us for the in-person open house. We'd love to meet you all. And you can learn more about the project at oakridgetn.gov/comprehensive plan to learn more about the project and take the online survey. And with that, I thank you all for joining and good evening.
Thank you.